Welcome to Worthy Ones, the video series where I take all the newest issue 1 comic books that I read for the current comic book week and deem them worthy or not worthy. Guys, I'm Mike Spider Slayer. Welcome back to Comic Book Corner 2.0. If you love daily comic book content and you like me helping you make decisions on what comic books to buy, I think you came to the right place. Why don't you consider hitting that subscribe button? Also, before we get started, I have a promotion here for Dynamite Comics trying to raise some money. Go on to humblebundle.com, and if you pledge at least $18, you're going to get 24 digital comics. Now, what are those comics? Well, if you're a fan of the Army of Darkness story, right, you're going to get 24 of those digital comic books, like Army of the Darkness, Ashes to Ashes, Army of the Darkness movie adaptation, 30th anniversary, and a whole lot more. But you don't have to pledge the full $18. You can pledge 1, 10, 18, however much you want to do it. It definitely goes to a charity. And if you want more information on how to obtain these digital comic books, I'm going to leave you the link in the description box below. So thank you for your consideration. Again, this is through Dynamite Comics. And our first book that we're talking about today is Teen Titans Go. This is issue 1. 32 pages for the price of $3. This one's written by Shali Finch and Dario Brzula does the artwork. The artwork is very familiar here. The characters just look exactly like, I would say, the cartoon series or the movie series. And if you are someone from the ages of, like, I don't know, from like 4 or 5 years old all the way probably until about 18 years old, this is a comic book that you would be very familiar with because you watched the show maybe growing up. And as an adult like me, I watched the original Teen Titans, and then I went to Teen Titans Go when I watched it with my kids. So again, I'm very familiar with all the characters and their personalities. And when I'm reading this book, I see their voices or hear their voices in my head. And this was a fun book. I'm not going to lie, the Teen Titans here have their comic book canceled, right? And so they come up with all these different genres of styles that maybe they can present to DC Comics themselves and say, okay, well, maybe they'll renew our comic book again. So just like maybe an episode of the show, you get to see kind of them becoming like their own Titan self again, and they go through like a zombie apocalypse where it's like black and white, right? Or it's just like this teen drama, maybe Archie style of comic book telling. And this book was fun. So I'm going to say that this one is worthy. Now, is it worthy probably for everybody? Probably not. Will I actually go out of my way and spend money on this on a regular basis? Probably not. But if you're looking to get I would say a younger audience into comic books, this is a great series for that. So, you know, it's fun, it's lighthearted, and that might be something they're familiar with on the screen. They're like, oh, I know the Teen Titans on TV. I'm going to read their adventures in the comic books. So this is a way to get a younger audience into comic books. So for that aspect of it, right, I'm going to give it a solid B. Right? If you've read, if you watched the show before, this plot has kind of been done before, but nevertheless, it was great, and I will recommend it for younger readers all day long. Unless you're a hardcore Teen Titans fan, and you're an adult and you love it, hey, more power to you. Blade Forger, this is issue 1. It's a $5 comic book published by Mad Cave. Second book in a row I'm checking out from them. And this one is written by Roy Miranda and the other Miranda brother. I can't say his name. Now, the artwork in this book is actually pretty nice. It opens up with this like cool gatefold cover, right? The artwork inside is pretty nice. In the opening scene, you got like this DJ talking or something like that, and there's this QR code on it, and you can actually listen to like the soundtrack of this comic book, which is a nice little added bonus. I like when publishers do this, you know. And then we got the artwork in this book, which looks really good from the beginning. And you're like, oh, wow, that's pretty awesome, right? And we get to learn about this particular character who is like the chosen one to like lead his people and go through these tournaments and all this different stuff like that. But the thing that this suffers from is like a lot of time jumps, and you can't really establish a brand new character in my eyes this way. And I'm kind of like, okay, like where are we going with this? Like we know he's like chosen to be like the ruler, this great fighter, but you don't get really any character growth, and it constantly jumps around, right? And so I was like, okay, like I wanted to really get into this, and for some reason I couldn't. Then we go into the guy's son, and then the dude is like super old, and then he's about to die, and then you wind up going back in time again, and then you wind up realizing that he had a daughter. So now I guess this book is about the daughter. So I don't know. I don't really know where we're going with this comic book. So for me, this one was just not working. This is one of those books where it was like, oh, I really want to like it, and then it didn't deliver in my eyes, right? I just felt like we could have told a real solid story with this main guy, and if we're gonna focus on the daughter, I don't know. It was a little bit all over the place, too jumpy, no real great character development, good artwork. I'm just gonna give this one a D+. It just didn't hit home for me, and sometimes, that's okay. All these books are not gonna be for everybody. Secret Six from DC Comics, issue 1, 28 pages for the price of $4. This one is written by Nicole Maines, and the art is done by Steven Segovia. The artwork is pretty solid in this book. I love the facial expressions here from John. There's bright, vibrant colors throughout. The paneling is pretty neat. This book opens up with some crazy nightmare from Dreamer in this comic. And so there's a lot of unstable, I would say, relationships or uneasy relationships that are going on in this comic. Now, this book is based off of Absolute Power, okay? This is a story coming right from that, and I like how we're still dealing with those ramifications, okay? So now Amanda Waller was in prison, and things are starting to get back to normal, but then what happens is Waller just somehow vanished from prison. So these characters are forced together to try to go to this prison to try to actually find out what happened, right? And again, there's some uneasy relationships. If you've read Absolute Power and the relationship kind of that John and Dreamer developed, we get to see that Jay, who is the boyfriend of John, is kind of jealous of that relationship with him and Dreamer. So he has a right to be kind of pissed off. But these guys have to come together, and they have to figure out what's going on. So you get to see them visit the prison, and they come across some of the other future Secret Six characters here. So these guys are going to come together in some weird shape, form, or fashion to try to find Amanda Waller. So this team was never really planned, right? They just kind of fall into place, and then we're going to get to see future adventures with them and trying to find Amanda Waller. This book was wordy. I don't say it was the best book, but it did deal with some emotional baggage and some of the things that happened in Absolute Power. They didn't forget those things that happened. So I gotta give it credit for that. If you're looking for your traditional Secret Six comic book, well, you should have known right from the start that it's not going to be that, okay? But again, I had a good time with it. I'm interested to see where it goes. Maybe not the best comic. It's kind of almost a little bit generic where it's just like, okay, here's all our characters. This is your setup issue, right? But it was fine. So I'm gonna give this one a C+ for now, and I'm hoping that it continues to improve, and I will enjoy it as time goes along. Star Wars Jedi Knights issue 1. Could this be the Star Wars book we've been looking for? I don't know. They might be playing Jedi mind tricks on you to make sure you read it. This one is 32 pages for the price of $5. This one is written by Mark Guggenheim, and the art is done by Matabek Muslabukov. Yep. Here's the artwork. It's not bad. You got this nice 2-page spread in here where we get to see the Jedi Council being badasses in this comic book right from the start. The book does a pretty good job at introducing everybody in the book, and you're going to get a lot of characters in here, and you're going to get a lot of new characters in here that you've never seen before. So, for instance, you're going to get characters like Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're going to get Yoda. You're going to get is it a female Yoda by the name of Yaddle and Mace Windu? And then, so there's all these different other characters in here. Now, my thing with comic books is that when you introduce so many players on the field, the characters have a tough time getting that panel time. But I think Mark Guggenheim does a pretty decent job at giving everybody a little bit of that spotlight so you slowly get introduced to them. So if you're a fan of also these prequel movies, I think you will also like this comic book, because you have Qui-Gon Jinn, you got a young Obi-Wan Kenobi, you still got Yoda who could do shit, right? So you get to see just a lot of action. And the more that I digest this book, the more that I actually like it. Now, there's a lot of political stuff in here when it comes to like two races going at possible war with each other and the Jedi intervening. But that's just kind of the setup of just what are things to come for this comic book, because what really sells you on this book is the last page. And you get to see a conversation between Jedi Master Yoda and a young Obi-Wan Kenobi. And he has all these crazy visions of things to come. And you get to see all these cool images and stuff like that. So this book is absolutely worthy. I think this is one of the better books of the week in my eyes. I don't think it's perfect just because it's like, there's a lot of like political stuff and there is a lot of like discussions going on, but they try to balance it out well. And yeah, I'm curious to see where it actually goes in the future of this book. So I'm going to give this one a B+. I thought it was a solid read, a good start to the prequel movies, and hopefully it continues to get better. So here's a book that I've been waiting for quite a while, guys, and this is The Herculoids. This is issue 1 from Dynamite. Now, I'm familiar with this property just because I used to watch the cartoon as I was a kid. But if you're not familiar with this property, then this is the first time that you're introduced to all these different characters. This is a $5 comic book. This one's written by Tom Sinagoski and Greg Rosenhau. I don't know. Does the artwork in this book. Here's what you can expect from the artwork. It's more cartoon style than I would want, I guess. Especially like if you've been reading Space Ghost and they introduce like that Hanna-Barbera property stuff. And that book is so filled with detail. It's much edgier, it's heavier, and I love that. And here this just seems to be a little bit lighter, almost not enough detail, not enough backgrounds in this book to the point where you're just like, oh man, I wish it was just a little bit better. Facial expressions not quite there. No like wrinkles in the faces or any dirt or anything. I mean, you're freaking living on an island or a planet, right? Like the only characters that I had a lot of fun with was like those jelly guys, right? Like those guys are so fun. I forgot their names. And the female here, what's her name? Tara. You know, you expect her to be a little bit nicer looking. She looks like a kid. She's not a kid. She's a full-grown woman. So the artwork definitely just not delivering many aspects of this comic. This is what you would want. That would make a very good comic book. What you see on the cover, that's what you would want as well. But we know that cover art is not the interior art for most comic books. But if you did get this, that's definitely what I would want to see. Good muscle definition and all that, right? But again, the jelly characters, those guys are freaking awesome. I love that. So now let's talk about the story of this book. The story has a very loose setup. It's very very point A, point B. We get to see the antagonist in this comic, and we get to see them try to go to the planet where the Herculoids are living, and we get to see them try to take over the planet. And so what this book does is it does introduce you to the characters, right? It just gives you like a panel and it showcases their name, but no real story or character growth, right, with these guys, right? It just shows you kind of like what they can do, and they take on the threat and they win, and that's basically it. And this was a big disappointment for me, unfortunately, and this is not worthy. I can't sit there and say I can recommend this comic book to you, right? Now, if you're a big fan of this property, go ahead, pick it up, right? And if you like it, pick it up. But as a book competing against all of the other comic books, comparing it to like a Space Ghost, this just does not hit the mark for me. Will I try another issue? I might, but I'm letting you guys know this one just was not worthy. And unfortunately, I'm giving this one a D with no good character growth from the first issue, no real good setup, just a little bit soft on the art. Yeah, man, it's definitely a disappointing book. Doctor Strange of Asgard. This is issue 1, published by Marvel Comics. It's a 32-page comic for $5. This book is written by Derek Landy, and the art is done by Carlos Magno. When you open up this book, the artwork is pretty decent. I wouldn't say it's like my favorite artwork. I feel like they're going for a like Conan the Barbarian vibes in this book. You get to see the snow and how rough and rigid it is there, and Doctor Strange trying to fit in and whatnot. So I thought it was pretty good. There were some pretty decent fight scenes in this comic as well. You get to see a little bit of magic used, but not a lot. Some of the character facial expressions were a little bit weird for me. Loki makes his appearance in this book towards the end, and I thought his face was like a little bit off, like that. Like this right here. So it was all right, but it wasn't like groundbreaking, right? And going into this book, I definitely did not have high expectations for it. I'm not a Magic fan. I'm not a Thor fan. And when you combine them together, it's like, oh God, what is this book going to have to offer for me, right? And in this book, you wind up getting to see Doctor Strange go to Asgard, right? He's no longer Sorcerer Supreme in Midgard, so he goes to Asgard and he asks permission to be kind of like the Sorcerer Supreme or the magic user in Asgard. And so Thor considers it and he says, yes, but you have to talk to this other person, this other female. And I totally forgot her name. I don't know who she is because, again, I'm not rich in that history, but it's this chick right here. So he has to talk to her. They have this whole conversation. Then all of a sudden, Loki appears in the comic book, and they all have a conversation, and they figure out a way for Doctor Strange to become the Sorcerer Supreme. He has to do a spell, and then something goes horribly wrong in this, and then it becomes this murder mystery. So I didn't see that coming. So for me, this is a tough one. I'm going to say this book is worthy. I will probably give it a story arc, but it's just not up my wheelhouse. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's great though either, right? But some people may really like this one, especially if you're, a Magic fan or a Thor fan. So I don't know. I wasn't expecting a murder mystery when he's supposed to be using magic, and you don't really see magic, and there's a lot of talking and there's a lot of setup. But it's a first issue, and you're always going to get that. So this is a tough one for me to grade. So I think I'm just going to give it the average C grade, and then we're going to see where it goes. We're going to see if it can get better to where it's going to win me over. Guys, let me know what you think about this one in the comments below. Web of Spider-Verse New Blood. This is issue 1. 32 pages, $5. Did not have high expectations for this. I've seen so many Spider-Verse stories that I'm just sick of them, right? The writers here are Matt Groom. We have Chris Lipios, and we have Greg Pak and Jordan Morris. We got different artists on each individual story here. We get to see a Spider-Hulk story, which was really nice artwork throughout that story. Even though it was a short-lived story, I would have loved to seen more of it. We get to see a story about Mary Jane, who's like Van Helsing, and we get to see this vampire Peter Parker, which this actually looked absolutely gorgeous, and I would love to probably see more of this version of Spider-Man, which I thought was really cool. And then we have this futuristic Miles Morales, who is with the Prowler in this book, who looks really good, and the colors really pop in here and whatnot. So what does this story have to offer, right? Because again, we've seen this over and over and over again. But this one seems a little bit different because it's introducing a contest of champions type of plot where we get to see the Web of Life recruit certain characters from the Spider-Verse. And this is like the heart of the Web of Life. It's chosen its different champions, right? And so what happens is that obviously it chose the original Spider-Man, it chose Spider-Ham, it chose the Weapon X Spider, it chose like an artist, an orphan, and somebody else, and it needs to find one more champion. So you go through all the different stories in this comic book to find out who that champion is going to be, and it opens up with the Spider-Hulk story, right? And you get to see that character, which I actually love, and it's an actual Mary Jane and Hulk story, or Spider-Hulk story. And we can see that as intimidating as the Hulk is, right? Mary Jane is just not afraid of him, but eventually does leave him. And that was kind of like, oh shit, right? I wish they would have dived into that a little bit more. That's the only problem with these Spider-Verse stories, is that they don't really have that room to breathe and to grow. But sometimes you never know when one can take off, and then it becomes its own series. Then you wind up getting one that really surprised me, which was Vampire Blood Peter Parker, or whatever the frick his name is, right? He's a vampire. He's Peter Parker. And you have Mary Jane in this comic book, who is Van Helsing. And she's a vampire hunter. So I did not see that coming. And you get to see her fight all these vampires, and she's got to try to take on Peter Parker. And then what happens in this one is she kind of comes across this web of life, or this all the different universes. She has this vision of him and her being together, and she has this moment of weakness, and you wind up seeing the teeth sink into her neck, and then she becomes a vampire, and they wind up happily ever after as vampires, right? And I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then you get to see this version of Miles Morales in the future, as we wind up getting to see the Kree. Was it the Kree that took over? I don't know. One of those groups. One of the alien races come and take over the Earth, and we get to see Prowler and Miles Morales work together. And something happens to the Prowler here, and Miles Morales now becomes a new character, a mashup, right, of characters, and he becomes the Spider Prowler, and he looks like that. So that's pretty cool as well. And by the time you wind up getting to the end of this book, you wind up seeing the Web of Life selected champion to be the final piece of the puzzle. And when you do see that, now it's going to continue in the next story called the Web of Venomverse, how it's going to select its final champion. And then there's going to be this big out brawl. This book was worthy. I had a fucking blast with this one, dude. It was really a good time. I just did not expect this one to be good. This was the best Spider-Verse story that I read in a while. And maybe because it has an overarching plot to it, or it's going to be like a contest of champions. And I want to see that battle. So, hey, at least there's a purpose to it. Was it perfect? No. I like to see stories breathe a little bit more, but it definitely introduced 3 characters. Well, Spider-Hulk's been around for a while, but it actually had 3 characters that I cared about. So I'm going to give this one a B+. I really enjoyed it. give this one a try. You might like it too. And there you have it, webheads. There are my thoughts on the newest issue ones for this week. Do you agree? Do you disagree? And as always, leave your comments down below. There's more content right here for you to click on. Support those local comic shops. Keep buying, keep collecting. But always remember, read your comic books so we can have great comic conversation. Guys, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you real soon. Take care. Bye.